Ellen, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, I like that whole aloha outfit you have.
Oh yes, yeah, had to be in theme. Yes.
Awesome. Thank you for taking the time to join us this afternoon. You know, maybe just to start off the session, I know you have friends on this webinar, but a lot of people probably don't know you that well. So, if you could share 3 things you would like people to remember about you when they leave this webinar.
Yeah, 3 things. I think I would like people to remember me as someone that's passionate. I think that a big part of my life is being driven by purposes that are greater than myself. So that's definitely something I would want people to take away. I'd want people to see me as a connector. I think that there's a lot of incredible resources here in Hawaii, but also outside. And so I'm really big on bringing resources together for people that need them. And I would also want people to see me as someone creative. I think that creativity is one of the most important skills that people can have. And so if I can be remembered as someone that's, bringing some new solutions forth in a creative way, that would be ideal for sure.
Awesome. Yeah, great point there. So I know, I remember you telling me that you studied here in Hawaii, but then you went to LA and now you're back again. Good for us.
Yes.
So what brought you back to the islands?
Yeah. So, one of the reasons that I moved here or considered coming here for grad school in the first place is because on my dad's side of the family, my great grandma, great grandpa, and all my grandma and her siblings were all like born and raised across the islands. And so I've always had, a feeling almost like an ancestral calling to come here. So I love LA. LA made me the person that I am today. But when I left after I graduated, I just missed it so much, like to the point where I was literally dreaming about it, like dreaming about being back here and swimming and just being in such a beautiful environment. But also on top of that, and I know we're going to dive into this, but I wanted to really start working more specifically with women and people of color. So when I saw this opportunity come up, I just thought, this is just the perfect time for me to come back.
So was it the Purple Mai'a program? Well, the FoundHer Accelerator, within
Yes.
the Purple Mai'a Foundation that brought you back?
Exactly. Yep, that is what brought me back. Mm-hmm.
Cool. So how do you learn about the opportunity? Were you, searching for it or? Yeah.
I was looking when I kind of decided that I wanted to come back, I was looking for several months. So when I worked at Elemental Accelerator out here, I connected with Elena Fardin, who is currently the executive director of the Native Hawaiian Education Council. So she's on the board of Purple Mai'a, and she shared about this opportunity on her LinkedIn. So I messaged her and I said, hey, I'd love to have a call with you. Can you give me the rundown on the organization and what you think about the role? So shout out to Elena. Thank you for putting this my way.
Awesome. I mean, I'm glad you saw that and everything found a place and we have you back here on the island. Maybe, we'll just take a little bit of time for you to explain about what this program is, because, I personally, I was super excited when I heard about it, and, I'm helping you guys get it off the ground as well, but maybe just share it broader with the audience and, hopefully we can get some more resources that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So Hawaii FoundHer is a 6-month accelerator program. So this is going to be the very first time we're launching. Right now, we're going through our applications and selecting the first cohort. So we are operating from September to March, and it's going to be a 6-month intensive program with a lot of different resources. We're going to have business development curriculum taking place on a monthly basis. We've got some really incredible mentors lined up, service providers, everything from accounting to legal to graphic design, web design. We also really wanted to design something that was from a really holistic perspective, recognizing that women have a lot of different roles that they play. And so that led us to wanting to add in that child and elder care stipend for those that need to use however they see fit. And then we also are going to have a non-dilutive grant. So that grant will take no equity in exchange with the company, but really help them to seed their company's growth and really push them toward their next milestones. And this program is specifically for women of Native Hawaiian, Asian, and Pacific Islander descent.
So you guys just closed your application period, correct?
We did, yeah.
Just how was it?
Yeah, we had a really incredible response. I mean, I remember we set our goal for 75 applicants, and that was kind of like our reach, and we hit 200. So,
Oh, wow.
that was something that really showed us that there's a need for more programming like this statewide.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Mhm.
So, it might have been before you joined the program, but do you happen to know what was the motivation behind it? It's one of the programs under Purple Mai'a, but
Yeah.
why the sudden focus on, this demographic of, founders?
Yeah, sure. So Purple Mai'a ran the Purple Prize previously, and more than half of the participants in that accelerator program were women, and so that kind of highlighted the need already for having a program specifically tailored toward women entrepreneurs. So Bella Hughes, who is the founder of Shaka Tea, based out of Big Island, and Gloria Lau, who, amongst other things, was the former CEO of the YWCA. They were the two, that came together and said, recognized that this was a huge opportunity to put forth something like this, a program supporting women entrepreneurs here in a way that hadn't been done before. And it was really a natural fit, working with Purple Mai'a as the operating partner, because, focusing on Native Hawaiian women and just women, local women entrepreneurs in general is a priority for the organization. So when Bella and Gloria brought it, it just seemed like the perfect partnership.
Awesome. So, this might be a really dumb question, but, what excites you about this program?
Yeah, that's not a dumb question at all. Oh my gosh. I mean, so many things excite me about this. Just as a whole, though, I think that I was excited when I first saw this job description, because I was like, wow, this is such a specific program. Like, for Native Hawaiian, Asian, and Pacific Islander women, I'd never seen anything like that before. So I think that we have a really unique opportunity here, because this is kind of setting the precedent in a lot of ways for what future programming of this kind could be like. So I'm excited to, really knock it out of the park with this first cohort and bring on some incredible companies, and then hopefully to see how it expands in the future.
Yeah. So would you say that this is the first of its kind, in terms of demographics? I don't recall seeing anything like this. That's why.
Yeah, there are some similar programs targeting women entrepreneurs here, but first of its kind in the way that we're offering the child and elder care stipend along with a non-dilutive grant. That's something that's a different approach for this type of model.
Cool. And you kind of touched on it a little bit, but maybe, if you can share with us a little bit more about what are you hoping to accomplish, through this program and even beyond the pilot, right?
Yeah, I mean, in the short term, the goals that we have for the program participants are, we want them to achieve 100 to 300% revenue growth within the first year of joining the program. We want to, through our resources, really support them in feeling an increased confidence and conviction in their business. And also, we want to see job growth. So, seeing a few jobs come up from each company, a few, every year, that's definitely ideal. And then, on the longer term, this is the first cohort, but we do want to run multiple cohorts going forward. And then, possibly find operating partners across the islands to, run we want to make an easily replicable model that can be ran across the state, so that we can increase our reach for sure.
Sure. And, since this is a brand new project, you touched on it as well a little bit. What are some of the challenges you're facing, with this project, getting off the ground? And, how can, hopefully some people in the audience listening in, how can we help, and what kind of resources can we bring?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what I mentioned before about having such a high volume of applicants, that's a blessing for sure, but it is also a challenge because for this first cohort, we're bringing on 5 companies. And so, our first thought was, oh my gosh, like this is such an enormous need. And it's not something that we at this point in time have the resources to be able to take everybody on. So our team has been doing a lot of brainstorming on what type of resources we can compile to send these other women that have applied. So if anyone has like creative ideas or resources that they want to share with the applicant pool, that's something that I'm definitely looking for. You know, just off the top of my head, we talked about maybe doing like a pre-accelerator workshop series, or putting together a list of evergreen resources that can be accessed. You know, I think there's a lot of creative ways that it can be done, but definitely want to address that group that applied for sure.
Yeah, should I leave your email in
Oh yeah.
chat? So I can leave your email in chat, and for those who, you know, who want to be part of this exciting, you know, endeavor by the FoundHer Accelerator, you can reach out to Darien, you know, directly and offer your help. So, you know, I just want to also pivot more towards, I mean, kind of your career and your path so far. Maybe just starting really broadly, you know, what are you passionate in?
So my original passion in my life was always art and design. I actually went to design school for fashion. And so I always grew up wanting to be, as young as I can remember, I wanted to be a fashion designer. I wanted to be a wardrobe stylist. I was a wardrobe stylist for several years, and it just kind of, I realized it wasn't really for me. But as far as the design aspect goes, that is something that I'm super, super passionate about. And then sustainability is definitely a complement to that. I remember when I first learned about the term sustainability, I was in undergrad. I think I was like in my junior year of college, and it was a completely new term for me. And I felt so drawn to it, almost to the point where I felt like I had to leave design behind. And that was tough until I realized that the two are absolutely connected, right? So those, I would say, like the environment, climate change, art and design, that's what I'm super passionate about.
Cool. Well, two questions I have for you that weren't on that list that I sent you. Who's your favorite designer? Just curious.
Oh gosh, that's really hard. Well, I'll say one of my favorite local designers is Mana'ola. I love Mana'ola's work. I actually got to work with Mana'ola during my graduate research here. And so I got an insight into the design process, and I'm always really interested in people's creative processes. So just learning about how they go from, you know, taking a concept through the traditional like Hawaiian way of producing prints and dyeing and all of that. It just was really inspiring to me. So definitely one of my favorite designers.
Okay, great. Yeah. And you know, what does sustainability mean to you? Because, you know, I think I know what it is, but when I ask people in different areas, you know, I say like fashion, or it could be energy, it could be so on. I think the idea of sustainability could be a little bit different, but what is your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, the textbook definition I was taught is meeting the needs of today without compromising the needs of the future. So I think that that is absolutely correct. If I'm thinking of it from a design perspective, I would say sustainability, it has a lot to do with resources. I mean, I guess it's kind of the same thing as what I just said, but thinking about, you know, you want to create something that's beautiful, that's functional, that, you know, the user can have a good experience with. So you're not compromising the design, but you're also not using resources that are going to be a strain on the environment, and you're also designing for longevity. So that's how I would think about it in that context.
Is this whole thing about sustainability and, you know, approach to sustainability a big part of the FoundHer Accelerator program as well?
Yeah, I mean, you know, one thing that's been really interesting to me is that the companies that have applied, while they're not necessarily labeling themselves as like, I'm a sustainable company or I'm focused on climate change, it's something that's really built into the values here. So a lot of companies, you know, their mission statements or just their practices of how they're operating, they are taking sustainable practices into account. So that's something that's been really exciting to see. And it's definitely something that we want to nurture as we are covering different topics in the program. You know, definitely want to cover life cycle analysis and sustainable supply chain. So it's definitely a focus. Yeah.
Cool. So I remember you telling me that your master's was kind of focused on sustainable practices of Hawaiian apparel companies. You know, I thought that was pretty cool. Can you share about, you know, what is that, and, you know, what did you learn through that program, and, you know, how is Hawaii, like, you know, Hawaii-based apparel companies different?
Yeah. The cool thing about my program was that it was so interdisciplinary, and that's really what attracted me to it, because a lot of the master's programs I saw were a lot more like lab science based, and that's just not me. I'm a lot more of like a creative thinker, or like thinking about like social systems. So this program kind of let me choose what I wanted it to be. So I didn't study anything really design or fashion related. It was more so of me taking the courses that were available, and along with my previous knowledge, and kind of weaving it together. So, some things that I took away from that, it's the same thing I just mentioned with the companies that applied. Hawaiian culture and sustainability, it's one and the same. It's mutually inclusive. You can't separate the care for the land from Hawaiian culture. So that's something that came up a lot, was the designers I talked to just said it's just embedded in our philosophy. Another thing that came up that was interesting was the global supply chain. So as you know, manufacturing is a challenge here, and so learning about their perspective on the globalized fashion industry and where Hawaii sits within that, some didn't see it as a limitation at all. And others did, because of the challenges of, importing certain fabrics, not having a lot of people that can sew on a mass production type of level. So it was a really interesting experience for sure.
Mm-hmm. And then you kind of moved to, after your master's, you went on to work for Elemental here in Hawaii, and then the LA Cleantech Incubator.
Yes.
I guess there's a similar theme that runs through those accelerators. Can you share a little bit about that? Did you choose to work for those organizations on purpose?
Yeah, I did. It was definitely intentional. So when I was in my last year of grad school at HPU, they would circulate different employment opportunities. And so that's how the Elemental Accelerator role came up. I had never heard of accelerators or incubators before. I had no idea what that was, but I did see that there were a ton of really interesting companies that were working to fight the climate crisis in a number of ways. So that was what originally attracted me to join. But from there, I became really, really interested in this whole startup ecosystem and entrepreneurship support. Like I said, it was nothing I'd ever experienced before. So when I had a year term with Elemental, that was right when I finished school. And so I knew I was going to come back to LA at least for some time. So wanted to try to find something similar. And I think a lot of the work that the LA Incubator and Elemental do are very similar, just in different demographics, different geographies, but overall the mission is the same. So I had a really, really positive experience with both of those roles.
Mm-hmm. I think one thing that's really interesting about working for accelerators or incubators is that those type of companies, they haven't been around for a long time. I would say probably 6-7 years, when this whole startup kind of ecosystem thing boomed. So I've worked for an accelerator very briefly, but for someone who is intentionally looking to build their career path working for accelerators or incubators and so on, what would be your advice for those people? Or what are some of the skill sets you think would make them valuable?
I think that if you say, you just pretend you have no relevant experience at all, and you're like, I just want to go for a completely new path, I would definitely start by doing some volunteer work, or try to seek out an internship or a fellowship. When I started with Elemental, I was a fellow, and I didn't have on paper like entrepreneur business experience. I had nothing like that, right? So there's definitely ways that you can spin your current skills to reflect what they're looking for. And I think getting your foot in the door, even doing some informational interviews, reaching out to people on LinkedIn. A lot of people did that with me while I was working at those two organizations, and just said, hey, can I just chat with you about exactly what you're asking me? Like, how did you get this job? What do you do? What's your day-to-day like? So I would just do as much networking like that as you can. As far as skills go, I feel like one of the biggest skills, and I'm still working on it, but one of the biggest skills is multitasking, because there's so much going on at all times, in a role like this. So you have to be really organized. You have to be really mentally organized, and you have to have like good organization tools. So I would say that's a big one. And then I would also start like just brushing up on like basics of, just what does it take to start a business? If you want to go into an incubator or accelerator, like on a traditional sense of like venture capital, like I would definitely look into like VC basics, just so that when you go in and you're talking to these people that are hiring, you can have some of like the language and demonstrate that you have like a baseline of knowledge of those two areas.
Mm-hmm. How about industry knowledge? I mean, do you think that was something that kind of positioned you?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not sure who's on this call, but, there's incubators and accelerators for like almost every single industry. So depending on which one you're interested in, yeah, I would absolutely try to get a baseline of knowledge of that industry. Because I started off at Elemental Accelerator, which has like that climate focus. And since that's what I studied, that's definitely what gave me like an advantage in that situation. So I would definitely say like try to position yourself similarly for whatever industry you're interested in.
Cool. So why do you like working for accelerators and incubators? I mean, what drew you to that?
Yeah, I think that it's a really cool thing to be able to work with someone that has such an innovative idea and give them resources and support to be able to position them to grow at such a fast pace. I've worked with some really incredible companies, and just being able to be like a part of their team in a way and guide them toward whatever it is that they need to do, whether it be fundraising or looking for partnerships or manufacturing, or a lot of times, honestly, I just provided like emotional support too. I got to know a lot of the founders on a personal level, and I'm still friends with a lot of them to this day. So it's just a really exciting journey. The entrepreneur journey is really exciting. There's a lot of ups and downs, but I think it's totally worth it. And so coming at it from the side of the incubator and accelerator, you're just in a really unique position to have your hands in a lot of different projects. I love it.
So are there any interesting startups that you've come across? I mean, it doesn't have to be FoundHer. It could be from your previous roles as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh my gosh. So many. Okay. So just because of my interest in design, I'll pick a couple from that category. Nature Coatings is really cool. They found a way to take wood waste and turn it into black pigment. Black pigment is, toxic when it's created in the traditional way. And so it's been applied to, they're working with super high-end designers now. They're also working with more like home finishings. I mean, it can just be applied to so many different things. So it's diverting, it's like that circular economy, right? Taking that wood waste and turning it into a new pigment. And then Rewilder is another one that was interesting too. They basically divert a lot of dead stock fabric and unwanted garments or accessories, and then they upcycle them into new product. And they also had kind of like a marketplace aspect where people could repurchase the materials. So I find a lot of those to be interesting. Oh, and then of course, Ampere, the electric airplanes, right? I worked a lot with Kevin during my time at LACI, but they're also part of the Elemental Accelerator, and did a lot of, test flights out here with Mokulele Airlines. So that's really cool. Electric airplanes, coming up. Many awesome companies.
It sounds kind of scary. I mean, like, runs out of, well, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, well, that's why they're testing it rigorously before we get on it. Yeah.
Yeah, so over at HTDC, we have the hydrogen cell fuel. I'm not sure, but you were saying like electricity, it's, I think has gained more advancement compared to hydrogen cell fuel. So I'm not sure what, where that's going, but that could be something interesting that you could come learn from us as well, and see how it can be applied. But
yeah, for sure.
In terms of, I mean, so you're working for an accelerator, and you right now, do you see yourself moving into an operational role, maybe perhaps with one of the startups in the future?
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, if learn anything from my life is that there's always like unexpected turns, right? And so I'm really open to so many different types of roles. I've honestly never thought about that, but I think that that would be really exciting. And I've seen a lot of my former colleagues have done that exact thing, transitioned into an operational role within a startup. So I think if it was one that really aligned with like my passions and values, sure, I would be open to that in the future.
Interesting. So you talked very briefly about it, and you said that multitasking was one of the skill sets that was important for a role, in an incubator or accelerator. What are some of the other skill sets you had to develop for, your roles?
Yeah, I think relationship building is huge because in my role specifically, on the program side, I'm not expected to be like an industry expert in every single area. I do have to have a baseline level of knowledge to be able to make recommendations, but I definitely have to have like a strong network of folks that I can tap. For example, working with you, on manufacturing and e-commerce, have to be able to connect with people and maintain relationships so that, you could bring them into the program and run it successfully. Yeah, organization is another one. I would say also empathy. I think that, the founder's journey, the entrepreneur journey is very up and down. And like I said, I've had a lot of just very like personal one-on-one conversations with founders. And I think that if I were looking at like this job description, that's not something I would know from just reading it. So I think that it's important to be, a person that can be a guide in a way, and make helpful suggestions when, a founder is going through a difficult time. I think those are probably the three most important ones that I've experienced.
Yeah, I mean, even that alone, it takes time to build those skill sets, right?
For sure.
Just kind of, you're how many months into the program right now, into building the founder program?
I started toward the end of May, so 2.5, 3, roughly.
Yeah, so it's still kind of getting your feet wet in a way, right? So I know it's been a crazy journey for you, but just based on your observations so far, do you think, or maybe let me put it this way, what types of resources do you think female entrepreneurs here in Hawaii need the most? I know you mentioned childcare and support, anything else that you're seeing?
Yeah, something that came out of reviewing these applications that came in is recognizing that there's a lot of companies that are at the idea stage. And so we're looking to bring on companies that are a little bit further than that. They already have some type of proof of concept, and they already have some traction with sales, users, et cetera. But I saw a lot of incredible ideas and a lot of really passionate founders that have an idea and they need to take it to that next step to be able to be at the right position for our program. So I think something that's really needed here is that business fundamentals support. So, how do you incorporate, what do you need to do for accounting? How do I price my products effectively? The unit economics, how do I build a team? Like those are all like big fundamentals. And I think, support for companies in that idea stage is big. But also, this is not unique to Hawaii, but access to capital. I mean, that's a common theme I always hear, right? When I was in LA, I heard that all the time. The women I would talk to, the founders I would talk to, always talking to me about their struggles getting investment, getting loans, et cetera. And that's also the case here as well. So access to capital, definitely.
I see. So access to capital is a common problem faced by both female entrepreneurs in LA and Hawaii. Do they face different challenges though?
I think so. I think a lot are very similar. Like all of the ones that I just mentioned, I think apply across the board. But I do think that LA has a bit more of a robust startup ecosystem. Maybe that's because of just, it's a way bigger population. Not sure exactly why that is, but I just recognize that there's a lot of networking groups or, events or programs similar to incubators and accelerators that are targeted in specific geographies or demographics. So I just think there's a little bit more development there. I think that that's an area that Hawaii has an opportunity to grow, is, you know, to be able to have not just us doing programs like this, lots of different programs like this for companies at different stages or different industries. And I also think that one thing that's been really interesting, when I was interviewing companies to apply for the LA Incubator, I almost never heard about like cultural values. Oh, yeah. And so here it's been really interesting because the Hawaiian values are so like strong. It's a part of the DNA. It's like woven into the fabric of these companies. So being able to maintain a cultural integrity while scaling business is something that's come up a lot.
So you mean, is that a concern that, you know, the companies have if they decide to partake in your program or participate in your program? Is it something they ask about?
Yeah, it's more so that they've expressed to me that as they themselves were thinking about like scaling their businesses, they didn't want like the authenticity of their product or service to change. So they wanted to maintain like those Hawaiian values, even when they scale to a larger level. And so I think that's something pretty unique to hear. And definitely something I was not hearing in LA. So while they were not saying they were concerned about that from our program, it's something that we want to make sure that we address.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I think there was one other question that I wanted to ask and kind of forgot. So, I mean, just kind of based on the population, you know, of applicants, what it was, I mean, do you have an idea what was the split like? Because I know you guys have like targeted industries, right? Or verticals.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was, we had, okay, so tech, fashion, health and wellness, and food systems and education, right? Those are the five. So tech was the lowest. And then the other four, well, I would say it was tech and then health and wellness. And then the other three were like a pretty even spread. So something that we're excited about doing though is like really diving deeper into the data, because we can see like based on what island, what's the biggest, like what's the most popular industry, what stage are they at, you know, what are the resources that they're needing like island by island. So that's something that we definitely are going to be diving into.
So I think Oahu would take most of take up most of the applicant pool, correct? Am I right?
It did, yeah.
Who's next after that? Which island?
Yeah, Big Island. So yeah, Big Island, and then Maui, and then Kauai, and then Molokai.
Oh,
we had two for Molokai.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah. So you know, Darien, you've worked with a lot of startups and entrepreneurs through your time in, you know, all these different accelerators and so on. So what do you think are some of the driving factors for success?
I think having a strong support system is huge. And that, you know, can exist outside of the accelerator as well, but having mentors, having other entrepreneurs that you can go to, confide in, share ideas, you know, the ones that had that kind of supportive network, I would say, you know, they really had a leg up, I feel, because they had like people to lean on and people to bounce ideas off of. I also saw that the ones that really did well were the ones that took every single opportunity that came their way and they went for it. I would always tell people, like previously when I was at the LA Incubator, that, you know, the program is a lot of what you make it. And I think that applies for any program like this as well. If you really like take the time and put in a lot of work with your mentor, if there's networking events, if there's, you know, meetings with potential funders, whatever it is, getting that practice, getting that visibility, I think that, you know, taking advantage of every opportunity, like those are the people that I saw really excelling. And then I also think having empathy for yourself, the founders understanding that the journey of an entrepreneur is challenging, and not being easily discouraged. I think that comes with time, and that's a hard skill to develop. But if you can develop that self-empathy, that'll definitely serve you well.
Sure. So I think those are great advice, and of course, driving factors for success. Female entrepreneurs specifically, any advice for them?
Mm-hmm. I mean, it would connect to what I said. One of the first things is to tap into a network for sure. I mean, it could be an entrepreneur network. It doesn't necessarily have to be folks that are in your exact same industry. I mean, that would be helpful, but I think that, searching for some kind of network like that is extremely beneficial. Another thing I want to address, I experience this all the time, and a lot of women that I've spoken with too, is like dealing with like imposter syndrome and feeling like, they're not good enough, they're not smart enough, like their idea isn't the best, whatever it may be. I just want to encourage like anyone that feels that way to push through that feeling, because we can be so self-critical, and I think that it can be helpful at times, right, to have little check yourself a little bit and make sure you're on the right path, but not to the point where it gets you frozen. So yeah, I guess I feel like this is all connected, but just having that self-empathy, and then a supportive network. I just feel like those are like the two most important things.
Yeah, so do you have any applicable tips in terms of pushing through self-doubt, whether it be, I don't know, running a pilot with your friends, or something like that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think, well, that's a fun idea. That's one that I hadn't thought of yet. I like that. I mean, pushing through the self-doubt. Yeah, I think that if you're feeling stuck, perhaps, getting momentum, I think, is one of the best things to do. So if it's still in the early stages, if it's still in the idea stages, getting out and just forcing yourself to do some customer discovery and getting feedback, I think that that's definitely something that can break or start the momentum again, right? Getting feedback from your customer, hearing, what they're excited about your product or service, what they think should potentially be altered, and then working from there, just so you feel like there's still that traction going. I think that's probably something I would do if I were in that situation.
Yeah, it's always easier said than done, right? Because we're not
doing
it. So, I completely understand. So I just want to ask you more about right now, kind of the younger generation, because as part of HTDC, our mandate is also developing the workforce in technology. But for your side of things, when you look at the young generation, is there a skill set or attribute you think it's important for them to develop and remain competitive?
Yeah. So things okay, I'm thinking about this, things that I wish that I did when I was younger. I think that schools are doing children and young adults a big disservice by not teaching about investing and teaching about entrepreneurship. I think that, if there are like some programs for youth in their area that have, entrepreneurship skills courses, that would be something I would highly recommend. And also, going and doing like some self-education. I mean, I don't know how many kids are realistically going to want to do that, but if kids would go and, do a little education on like learning about investing and entrepreneurship from an early age, I think that is something that could set them up for a completely different life. And absolutely something I wish that I knew about. And, I would say like questioning institution to a healthy degree. I think that when I was in school, there were a lot of like things that I accepted, that the path in life is linear, and there's ABC. You graduate, you go to college, you find a job, done. I think that is absolutely not true. And, that's one of the things that I've seen proven time and time again from the companies that I've worked with, that there is no one path to success. And so I think having like a healthy criticism of, thinking that is the only way, while also developing skills toward an alternative path, I think that would serve the younger generation well.
Yeah, great advice. So I think one thing I would also really want to learn from you is, as you're vetting through all these applications, right, you need to kind of have benchmarks and, criteria in terms of what, which companies you think would do better than others, and which companies need more resources to succeed. So how do you, I mean, kind of taking from your own internal knowledge as well, right? How do you keep up to trends and changes in, this, I would say, industry as you're reviewing all these companies? Like, how do you know you're making a good judgment call, I guess?
Yeah, well, one thing is, it's not just me, so I absolutely would, for anyone in a similar position, put together a group of advisors and reviewers that, have a variety of backgrounds and expertise, so that you avoid, like what you're saying, like not being sure if you made the right choice, because I think that those multiple perspectives are incredibly valuable. Just from the criteria of our program itself, beyond like the basics, being early stage, having revenue proof of concept, et cetera, we want to make sure that these companies are able to really take advantage of the resources that we're providing. Make sure that they're a good fit for, the mentors, the curriculum that we have. Want to make sure that that is an appropriate match, so that they will be able to get to like that 100 to 300% revenue growth and whatever other milestones they set for themselves to be able to achieve. And then also, something that we're looking at is the potential that these companies have to make a positive impact on their community in Hawaii, their families, et cetera. So, that's maybe not something that's as quantitative. It could be if you count it in terms of jobs, but we're looking for companies that, have that ability to create agency within their communities and really diversify Hawaii's economy. Hopefully that answered your question, but as I'm going through the final cohort selection, like these are kind of the things that I'm keeping in mind.
Yeah, that did. But I mean, I think also in addition to that, kind of maybe a broader question is what inspires you, or what do you look to keep up to date, with trends in your space, and so on, like making the good, judgment calls, I guess, if that makes sense.
Oh, like trends for like different types of startups and everything like that. Yeah, I mean, I think that a big part of my role and similar roles is, like you're saying, like keeping abreast to like different trends and changes. I read the news quite a bit, and see what are the different rising industries, different areas that local communities are focusing on, so that the companies that I would be looking at, toward the future, maybe for next cohorts, would be addressing like the most pressing issues that the communities are facing. So that's kind of how I would keep up with whatever trends that are arising at the time.
Awesome. So I just I want to shift gears a little bit and make it a little bit more fun. So some fun questions coming up before we go into Q&A. So if you have questions for Darien, feel free to put them in the Q&A function, and we'll get to them. This question I like asking is, if you could have coffee with anyone, dead or alive, who would it be?
Oh, that's so easy. It would be my grandparents, for sure. Yeah, my grandma on my mom's side, I grew up with her, was super close to her. My great grandpa on my dad's side, I was also very, very close to, and they both passed away when I was, a kid. And so, I didn't get to, at least on this plane, I didn't get to share anything going on in my life. So if I could have coffee with them, that would be a dream come true, for sure.
That's really sweet. Yeah. Okay. And I think this question, what's next for you? I mean, where do you see yourself in the next 3 to 5 years? I kind of hesitated asking that question only because, with the whole pandemic, like, all these plans just go out the window, right? So
I know, gosh, that's so true. That's so true. Yeah. Well, if I could plan everything, I have so many interests in life, and so there's a lot of things that I want to do while I'm here. So I want to definitely at some point make my way back toward design. I have a lot of concepts for different sustainable clothing lines. And so definitely want to get that off the ground at some point. I also have for a long time been really interested in politics and have thought about running for some type of public office. So not totally sure what that looks like yet, but I absolutely want to do that. And then I've also had like ideas for nonprofits. I mean, Ellen, I could just like, there's so many, I have so many ideas. It's really hard to choose,
Yeah.
but I think that those two things would probably keep me busy in the next 3 to 5 years for sure.
Yeah, well, you're still really young, so you have a long, path ahead. And
Yeah.
Terry's saying, vote Darien. Yeah, definitely. And I'm not sure if you knew, but when I first moved here to Hawaii, I think 6 or 7 years ago, there was still a fashion incubator. I'm not sure if you ever heard of it.
You mentioned that a little bit to me, but I didn't even know about that prior to you saying it. Yeah.
Yeah, so I knew there was something called a fashion incubator. I think by the time I came, it closed.
Yeah.
But there have been talks about bringing something like that back. So I don't know. I mean, if I hear of anything, I know who to ask and who to get involved.
So cool. Yeah, please do. If you hear anything about that, let me know.
Yeah, so that would be pretty cool. But love to hear all about your ambitions and happy to help in whatever way I can. But let's see. Let's go to Q&A right now. We have 2 questions. Well, let's see. The first one from Lanita. She's saying, just moved to Maui with my tech company, procedurecard.com. How do I connect with women in tech in Maui? Should I be focusing on Oahu? I'm excited to grow my company here. So yeah, Darien, you can go first.
Sure, yes, and then would love your input too. I mean, if you're just strictly networking, since you just moved, recently, Alec on my team shared with me, but there's a Hawaii Slack channel. There's so many people that also have like just recently moved with, maybe they're like freelancers or consultants or also have a company, but I would definitely suggest going onto the Hawaii Slack because I've already like met some people on there. Yeah, that would be great to do. Sorry, I just got distracted because a thing popped up. Go ahead, Ellen. Did you have an addition?
Oh, I would say reach out to the Maui Economic Development Board. Leslie Wilkins, who runs it over there, she is a big proponent of women in tech. So, if you reach out to them, I'm sure they'll be able to help you kind of position yourself within the Maui community. But at the same time, from a business perspective, of course, a lot of business is done here on Oahu. So I would, like what Darien said, even though you are based there in Maui, you can always use the Hawaii Slack to still be connected to people who are here on Oahu itself, just to see where the opportunities are. Okay, great. So I hope you answered your question, Lanita. Feel free to reach out to Darien or reach out to us at info@htdc.org if you have more questions. Next question from Ifra. How do you balance your career, personal life, and passions? Is there such a thing as balance?
Well, that's a really hard question. Ifra is one of my best friends. So hi, Ifra. Thank you for your question. I mean, I feel like she and I have talked about this, but it's hard. I mean, I have to consciously set boundaries for myself. I do think there is such a thing as work-life balance because I don't think that we were created to work. I think that, we should enjoy our lives and enjoy the people in them and explore our passions outside of work. So I think, yes, it does exist, but I think it's hard to do. I think you have to be really intentional in setting up your time and really disciplined with sticking with a calendar of when you're going to do certain things.
So Darien, have you heard of something called Seasons of Life? I just learned about it a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, but someone told me, he was like, oh, there's something called Seasons of Life where there are times of your life where there's no such thing as balance and there are times of your life where balance can come in. And I was like, well, that makes sense, I guess, Yeah. So I don't know, I thought it was an interesting concept, but yeah, I haven't really researched into that term. He called it Seasons of Life.
Seasons of Life.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Do you have any tips for work-life balance?
I don't have balance. Let me just put it that way. Sorry, Ifra.
No?
I don't believe in work-life balance. So don't take any advice from me on that. I'm a workaholic, so yeah, not the best person to ask. Let's see. The next question from Anne. What are the most important qualities you would look for in an employee?
Anne is my mom. Hi, Mom. It's a good question. Okay, so when I've interviewed people, I have looked for people that have really done their homework about the job. when someone comes in unprepared, no judgment, but I just, probably wouldn't go in that direction. So if someone really showed that they were interested in the job by doing the research, asking really good questions, that's always a really good sign. I would also look for someone that had demonstrated skill in the area that they're applying for. So doesn't necessarily have to be an exact perfect fit. Like say you're applying for program manager and you've already been one, but looking for skills that are like transferable. So if you've done something that shows that you can apply your skills to this type of job, that's definitely something I would be looking for. And then I also look at, I've previously looked at the person's willingness and ability to learn new skills, because I think there's always a learning curve when you start a new job. So if the person can demonstrate in the interview that, honesty, maybe they don't know every single thing about the role, but they're willing to put in whatever time and effort they have to be able to get comfortable with those skills. I think that's always a good sign too.
Yeah, and by the way, I wanted to say, Anne, Darien's mom, Darien is awesome. Just want to let you know, putting it out there. I don't know her that well. We've only started working together for 2+ months, but she's been great so far. So I just want to let you know that.
Do you have any input on that question? I think that's like interesting because I think everyone will answer that differently.
Oh, you mean for
employee?
An employee? Yeah, well, I think mine would be very similar to yours, but I think for me, what's important actually for someone I look in an employee is initiative. Someone who's able to take something on and run with it. I think another thing is how well that person's able to work in a team, because you don't do everything alone, right? And I think that's so important, because I realize that not everyone work well in teams, or have the capacity to work in teams. So I think depending on the nature of the job, I guess, I think teamwork, the ability to work in a team is really important for me. And lastly, communication. Some people just don't communicate really well, so it's a little bit harder. So I think those would be the 3 qualities I would look for. How I would unearth that in an interview, I don't know, but those are important to me. Okay, wait, we have 2 more questions in Q&A. Great. So Holly is asking, sorry if I missed this, but among the applicants you have been reviewing for the FoundHer program, have you made your final selection? And if so, what made you select them? What were some of the characteristics or ideas that stood out?
So we have not selected the final cohort. We're going to be notifying everyone that applied within the next few weeks. So right now, we're just going through the applications, looking for that basic criteria. Do you fit that? And, looking for cohort composition as well. So we would love to have representation from the 5 industries that we mentioned, if possible. We're looking for, a cohort that we think would have cohesion, but also like differing complementary skills. Companies that'll have like a positive impact on Hawaii and the economy and the community. But we have not made the final selection yet. So I can't speak to what made us choose any specific companies at this time.
Okay, so stay tuned, Holly. I think they will have more to share in the next couple of weeks.
Yes, for sure.
Molly's asking, what should we listen to next to keep our workday lively yet focused? I know you always have the best music.
Hi, Molly. Molly and I work together at the LA Incubator. Okay, so lately, I'm gonna put it in the chat, but I've been listening to Steve LACI a lot. I think that it's like a good mood. It's kind of a little bit repetitive. His latest project, which is kind of just like a compilation of leaked songs, and it's really good though. It's really good. Highly recommend. Good energy, but you can still focus.
Great. Okay, so I want to be conscious of time. One last question from you that I ask every single guest on this show. Give us one word you would like to leave the audience with today, and why?
Persevere. Yeah, persevere. Life is hard, and I know that I'm sure everybody on this call has had some challenges, especially in the past year, and it can be really easy to want to just you know, curl up in a ball and not push forward, but persevere. I mean, there's, like you said, seasons. I think there's seasons of challenge and seasons of growth and seasons of prosperity. So I would just encourage everyone to keep pushing forward.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Darien, and taking for the time to speak with us today.